Welcome to Fandom
and Wellness,
a podcast about the complex relationship between fandom and mental health.
Disclaimer, we are not psychiatrists or psychologists. We are just fangirls with a vested interest in mental health. I'm Arkeida.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Danielle.
In this episode, we're talking romanticized, unhealthy relationships in media. Trigger warning. We will discuss abusive relationships and everything that is associated with them. So if you think that you will be triggered by discussion of those kind of topics, we would recommend that you listen to this episode when you are in the right headspace.
We've tried to record this episode a couple times, and it's a cursed episode. So while there are many, many examples of romanticized unhealthy relationships, we're basically highlighting some of the ones that we've either personally romanticized or else we notice a lot of fans view as like quote unquote couples goals. We're not shaming anyone who grew up enjoying any of these fandoms or who currently likes them. All three of us like different ones that we're featuring throughout the episode. We recognize that like basically we are all like, you know, grew up on watching the same types of things. Like Disney, for example, is like a huge company. So those things just have a huge impact on your life.
Yeah. So let's jump into the episode with the number one that I feel like we're all introduced to at the earliest stages of our life. Mm-hmm. So why don't you take it away, Danielle?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Disney movies are obviously like amongst the first romantic relationship films that young children, especially cisgender girls, end up viewing and often idolizing.
Yeah, and if you think about it, there aren't that many examples in media of like protagonists that focus on young girls.
Mm-hmm.
And so like Disney does that when like not a lot of other properties might.
Yeah, definitely like properties are getting better about it, but at least when we grew up it was very like, this is what you, if you want to see girls, this is what you see.
Yeah.
It's also, Disney is kind of like a false safe logo. So like parents don't feel like they have to really talk to their children about those movies. They feel like they can just like kind of put them on and be like, these are okay, because they're not usually like overtly violent and things like that. They should be held to kind of higher standards. So really, like, honestly, like anything we talk about, if you really like talk to your kids about them, then the impact will be very different than if you don't, which we've talked about previously. So first off, studies actually show that young cis boys who watch Disney movies are actually more helpful and have better body esteem. I guess because they usually are watching like hyper-masculine superhero shows and things like that, which that makes sense to me.
Right. Like outside of Disney, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Disney princesses are still like, obviously their bodies are like pretty fucking in shape, but they're not necessarily like, they're not, I mean, other than like Gaston, they're not normally and yes. Gaston is a villainized kind of, so like.
And when you think about the media that was out at that time, a lot of it was very, very testosterone heavy. You think about shows like He-Man, G.I. Joe, I don't know, Skeletor. I don't like Skeletor. Sorry, I don't remember all of it. But like,
is that Buff Skeleton?
It really was a Buff Skeleton, though. But like, you think about like how polarizing those two are when it comes to like the portrayal of being a man in a Disney film, of that time versus like the cartoons that were out that were also targeting boys at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, probably the worst effect that a young boy would get from watching a Disney movie is that of like the princess and the girl needs to be saved,
right? Mm-hmm.
Which is obviously something also young girls are internalizing, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So the first thing I want to talk about with Disney is the idea that like you must be pretty and thin to be loved, which is something that is predominant amongst all of their princesses. Merida is the first princess that they introduced that is not rail thin. Mm-hmm. But then when they released a doll of her, they made her incredibly thin and it was boycotted.
Right.
It's a problem. It's a huge problem. Do you guys have any commentary on that? Did it affect you at all?
Oh, that definitely. Growing up watching Disney films, I absolutely felt as though if I did not embody that body type, then I would be deemed less attractive. And it's already hard enough growing up as a Black girl in Brooklyn of Caribbean descent. You're already a step behind because you're not white. You don't have blonde hair. You don't have straight hair. You don't have wavy hair. So like, you're not going to look like them no matter what. And you just kind of, you feel as though you have to mirror your life to being like this princess. And for you, that's never going to happen. And it does end up taking a toll on like your self-esteem because you see these films and you see all the other media that then mimics those films. And it's never something that looks like you. So you're never going to look that way.
Yep. I mean, yeah, as someone who just realized that they might have body dysmorphia, like,
no.
that's...
Like, yeah, you do.
But, like, I'm like, oh, shit. It's like, it's permeated into every single thought, every single social interaction, every single time I look in the mirror. So, yeah, I would say it's had a bit of an effect. So,
no, you do. And even, like, as an adult, I hear so many other women joke, like, haha, I wish I was skinny as XYZ or as XYZ princess. And it's like, they're not real. It's not a real person.
Yeah.
You would physically have to remove ribs and bones out of your body to have that body type.
I don't want to stray onto Barbie, but just real quick, like, it's funny when people, like, idolize Barbie because if Barbie was a real woman, she would not be able to stand. She wouldn't be able to stand.
Right. She would be a monster.
Which, P.S. Barbie is actually, like, really cool now and really inclusive, and I actually do stand Barbie pretty hard now. But at a time, it was like, what the fuck? Anyway, so another concept is love at first sight. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the princesses we see literally marry the first man that they ever meet. Right. Usually it's while they're on, like, an adventure, so, like, all their feelings are, like, very chaotic, and it's within days of meeting them. So, like, this really does confuse the concept of love and lust. It really did for me, really, really badly. I definitely had, like, what I called Prince Eric syndrome growing up.
What?
Prince Eric. So Prince Eric is the prince from Little Mermaid, obviously. Right. I just very quickly fell in quote unquote love, but it was actually lust with boys that looked like Prince Eric.
Okay. All right.
I guarantee you at least one person messages us and says, "Oh my God." I've had this conversation many times.
Okay. Oh no.
All right.
Love takes time. Most Disney movies take place over like 3 days or something?
Yeah.
And they're married.
A week at most.
Yeah, so they should have ex-boyfriends, honestly. And
but they don't.
But they don't. And I think part of it is the idea of purity.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If you have ex-boyfriends, probably there isn't any, there's no purity.
Oh,
yeah.
Also, virginity is a social construct to add value to a woman, so fuck that.
Right. I'm not saying it's true, but that's the idea.
Yeah.
For most of my life, I was going to say up until college, but that's a lie. I still was like falling head over heels as soon as I met somebody. And you know what? I still do. And I've come to learn and accept that that's the person I am. But I also, I had to unlearn all the things that I had learned as a child about what it means to actually meet someone and love someone and care for somebody. Will I still care for them with my entire heart? And do I fall way too hard and way too fast? Yes, absolutely. But now I'm not doing it thinking they're going to mean the world to me after one day, because you don't know this person. You don't know, people change over time. And not only that, you have to get to know people over time.
You know, I also feel like it creates the idea in your head that their concept of you is more important than your actual opinion of you. So like a lot of times when someone is going on a date, like we've talked about this, like you're like, oh, I hope this person really likes me, instead of thinking like, I hope I like this person.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is something that kind of leads to that.
And I've heard so many, like, I've heard stories about people being like, oh, I didn't like him at first, but then I fell in love with him. I'm like, how the fuck did that happen?
We're going to talk about that too. We're talking about that. Disney, you did a lot to us.
I hate those stories so much where it's like, he kept trying, so I'm like,
What I do like is when you both hate each other and then you fall in love.
Right.
That's just what I like to read. Anyway.
I will say, I'm gonna out Ben right now. Ben was mean to me when we first met for like...
Really?
But that was years ago.
But, well, I was nice to him constantly.
Okay.
And he was mean to me. He was just like, I'm not gonna be your friend.
What?
And then one day he gave me the best apology that anyone has ever given me in my entire life. And I was like, maybe I have a crush on this boy now. And then I had a crush on him for years, and then we started dating and got married 6 months later. But that's very, I don't know, that's very...
To be fair, you knew each other for a very long time, right?
Yeah, we knew each other for like 5 years before we started dating. But the first like year or two of that, he was mean to me.
Oh my god.
Oh my goodness.
Interesting.
But a really good apology wins me over every time.
Okay, if you say so.
Friendship-wise, too. I love apologies. I love apologizing. So you were talking about like ex-boyfriends right. And whatnot. One of the reasons why a lot of them don't is because of their ages.
Yeah.
Snow White, for example, is 14 years old when she marries her prince, who is 20 years old.
Yikes.
The oldest princess is Elsa at 21, which is a pretty damn new movie in Disney terms.
21 is not old.
And she doesn't have she's a queen technically, but and she's Ace in our heads. So or Arrow. Tiana and her prince are at least of the same age range, 19 and 20. Mm-hmm.
Just so much better, thank God.
Yeah, but a lot of them are real fucked up in age. Mulan, for example, is 16, and she marries a 28-year-old.
You know, I didn't.
Yep, I'm sorry to wreck your child.
This is one of those situations where if you are someone in high school or younger, and there is a grown-ass man talking to you, and if they're more than 5-6 years older than you, it's because no woman their age or no one else their age wants to deal with their shit. They are a bum. And if he's trying to talk to you, you tell on them. And you tell everybody.
Tell on them every time.
Because no, he's not coming to you saying you're mature for your age. He's coming to you to groom you because nobody else wants to put up with him. So he's teaching you how to put up with him. And that is the start of an unhealthy relationship.
Yeah. I was like seeing, but not yet hooking up with someone who was like 15 years my senior when I was like 16. And then when I was like 18, he was like, wow, you really have like a woman's body now. When we started like actually hooking up. And I was like,
yikes,
but in my head, I was like, yeah, I am a woman.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I was you're young at that age. You don't realize that you should not be dating someone 15 years older than you.
And I, for a long time, thought that I was in a healthy relationship before I realized I'm not being satisfied in any way possible with things I want to be doing and accomplishing in life. And it feels as though, like, if I'm constantly having to talk to my partner and compare my relationship to every other healthy relationship, and they just come back to me and say, well, I'm not like that. And it's like, well, you could at least try for me because I'm sitting here wasting my time. And I'm like, and he was also 14 years my senior, and I'm like, nobody dated you in your age range because you're fucking crazy.
Because they can see.
I'm sorry,
they can see what's happening.
But they can see, like, the things that you will not do for anybody, and you just want someone to be there and put up with you. And that's not fair, and that is not a relationship. That is a babysitter for an abuser.
Yeah. So, just some factoids. 2/3 of people who marry that are between the age 15 and 22 wind up divorcing. It's also fucking rape to marry someone who's 14 or 15 or 16 years old and in your 20s.
Yeah.
Your brain is not actually fully developed until around 25-ish. Recent research has been found that adult and teen brains work differently. So adults think with their prefrontal cortex, the brain's rational part. That's where basically the brains respond to situations with good judgment and awareness of long-term consequences, whereas teens process informations with the amygdala, which is the emotional part, which is why it's so problematic when someone who is in their late 20s dates someone much younger, because your brain is actually formed differently. So it is a total, like, power play.
Right. Someone mentioned grooming earlier, and I wonder if a lot of people even know what that is. Can you explain it a little bit? As I understand it, it's usually when an older person interacts with a younger person, and uses their naivety. It's
like they're using their naivete to build trust, and not only that, it's like keeping things secret, like saying you're my friend, saying you're mature for your age, and keeping like this relationship going until they're old enough to be with you, and then
usually sexual acts don't happen during grooming. They're basically preparing you
to be with them.
Yes.
Right, and usually it's like kind of like when you're young, and this could be pretty much any age as a teenager or younger, you're still growing and you're still forming like the paths in your brain or whatever, and they help you form those paths to make you like be like sexually attracted to them specifically, or they just like create these patterns in your brain so that you become
ready for them. And I think what's so hard, especially if you're younger, knowing now what I didn't know then about like the way your brain develops, it's hard to distinguish grooming from romance. You think that they're doing these nice things because they actually care for you, or instead they're just preparing you to like...
They're shaping you.
Yes.
Well, it's also like no teenager in the world wants to hear that their brain isn't fully developed and they're not,
Right. It's...
and they're not thinking the same way as an adult.
Right.
Which are like, it's a fact that they are not, but it's a very difficult concept for a teenager to internalize. Because it comes off like an asshole if you say it to a teenager.
Bit,
so like you can't, it's, you gotta be a real self-aware teenager, which is, I don't know about that. So
don't know too many of those.
Yes. So another concept is that single women who are in their mid-20s or over are basically villains.
That's and me, baby!
Their motive is usually jealousy.
Right.
So, like, think about, like, Ursula or Maleficent or, like, the Evil Queen or Cinderella's stepmother.
Yeah.
Or, like, her sisters, even, who are, like, approaching their, like, 20s or something.
Yeah, I don't know what they are. Yeah.
Well, they're not beautiful, and they're like approaching their 20s, so they are villains.
Spinsters,
and they deserve to be unhappy.
Terrible.
I will say that one of my favorite movies, where the princess, it is a Disney movie, I feel like it's very underrated and doesn't get enough credit.
Well, it's not a cartoon, right?
It's a cartoon and live action. It's a mix. Okay. It's a mix, and it's Enchanted. And the princess in that is actually 33 years old.
What's up?
She's 30.
I'm 33.
Palindromes. She's 33, and she learns what it means to date before choosing to get married. And she becomes a really good stepmother. Like,
are you talking about the Anne Hathaway movie, or
no? This is with Amy Adams.
Yeah.
Oh,
Patrick Dempsey.
Yeah, Patrick Dempsey, who, God, he must be much older than her. Super hottie. Much older than her.
Yes, but at least he's 33.
I'm thinking of Ella Enchanted.
Oh my god, I forgot about that movie.
Oh, that's a blast from the past.
That is a blast.
Real quick diversion. That's the word I was looking for. Quick diversion. Anne Hathaway in that movie literally does not have control of her body. And eventually... Do you know that movie?
It's like they could say something and she'd have to do it.
She's cursed, like...
To always listen to what people say.
Always do whatever anyone says. And not everyone knows that, but her family knows that. And like, the woman, the other older woman in her family know that and control her that way. And like, she's like cursed to kill somebody, but she eventually doesn't. And I don't remember how it ended, but I remember thinking it was such a fun movie, and it was a book first. But I'm just thinking about the theme of autonomy, and how that is like a literal interpretation of that.
Well, Jenny, studies show that those with full autonomy, aka the ability to do whatever you want and not be fucking controlled like Ella Enchanted, are the happiest.
Yep.
Happier than married people, happier than anyone. Studies show that single people are no less happy than people who are married, and they are happier than those who are divorced. And studies also show that you get happier with age. So you are not going to become a villainous shrew if you are 21.
That is true. Going back to having bodily autonomy, Brave might not be the most perfect example, but in that movie, she does choose not to marry one of the many men presented from her clans based on some strength competition, and shows her own skill set in archery because she is good at that, and she does want to have control over her life, over her body, and over who she chooses to marry. And what ends up happening because she takes control of her life and her future is that she ends up building a better bond between her and her mother, and also making better ties within her neighboring clans, strengthening her kingdom.
Another problem with Disney movies is that there is a lack of consent, especially when princesses first meet their princess. And really, it's when the princes meet the princesses, because the princesses aren't awake for it.
Yeah, 2 entire Disney movies romanticize kissing a woman while she is unconscious.
Yep.
And that's how we will fall in love.
That's too many, but it's definitely one too many. Because I confuse the 2 movies so much, because why would that happen in 2 movies?
Yeah.
That's too many movies to have that happen.
Yep.
Damn.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not going to end up talking about Star Wars later because we just had a Star Wars episode, but Star Wars is technically Disney now. So I just wanted to say real quick that, like, this is, like, reinforced by, like, Han and Leia, like, Han forcing a kiss on Leia when she was, like, literally saying, like, go away, like, I don't want to be around you.
Mm-hmm.
And they are a super romanticized couple. I mean, my husband and I have wedding rings based on them.
Yep.
Another really horrible trope is the happily ever after clause. It basically teaches, or tries to teach you, that falling in love will erase your traumatic childhood, which obviously will not happen.
No, it will not. And if anything, you bringing all that into a new relationship makes a relationship harder. It also teaches you that you need a marriage to get out of whatever situation you're in and make your life better, which does not work. Like, growing up, you assume, okay, marriage is the answer to all of the problems I have. And even I've thought about that, and I've considered, like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to get married before I'm 25, and then I'll have this fairy tale life. And I'm like, did that happen? No, because I'm obviously 28 now.
Bold statement. Walt Disney groomed us all for abusive relationships. Anyway. It creates a fantasy of being rescued. Marriage is very hard, no matter how much you love your partner. and it is constantly work. You constantly have to work on your own issues, and you constantly have to work on issues together because you're two separate people bringing two separate things to the table. And Disney movies do not teach that. They're like, kiss and yeah. Anyway, another problem that goes straight into this is that a lot of the marriages start in deception. Like The Little Mermaid, Cinderella, Aladdin, Mulan, Tiana, like Princess and the Frog, all of them lie to their partner, or the person who ends up being their partner. And if you are in a relationship that is going to work, it needs to be an honest, open communication.
Yes, absolutely. In defense, but not in total defense of Princess and the Frog, Naveen was total trash in the beginning.
Naveen lied to her for more than 3/4 of that movie.
Did he? I feel like he came out as soon as they got into the bayou, which was like maybe a third, half. But either way, he does come clean to Tiana and lets her know, and then they end up trying to work together to fix this curse.
They all end up coming clean. Like, yes. Ariel comes clean to Eric at Eric's, almost wedding. To another woman he falls in love with at first fucking sight. Aladdin comes clean to Jasmine. Like, they all come clean at some point. Like,
it's like if their hands were not pushed, it would not have happened.
Yeah. But this falls into the last trope that I want to talk about with Disney, which is loving someone for what's inside, which can actually cause people to stay in abusive relationships. It is probably best seen in Beauty and the Beast, because, like, all of the townspeople are like, yeah, Gaston's the fucking best. You should totally get with Gaston, even though he's, like, a total piece of shit and, like, throws her books, like, in the water and everything. And then they're like, and then all the servants of the Beast, they're like, the Beast is the best, even though he's literally screaming at her that she can starve if he doesn't do what she says, and he literally locks her in a tower.
Yeah.
Well, not even in a tower. She was in a jail cell before, and the servants were like, it's cold. Oh, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, no, you're right. He locked her father, her old going senile father, in a tower, and then he was like, you're pretty, so you can wander the castle. The entire Beauty and the Beast situation is absolutely abusive in Stockholm syndrome, and it's that tired trope of, you can fix a man, you just gotta stay with him, and if you stay with him long enough, he'll be better. And so many people get caught into that, where it's like, I'm going to stay with this person because I can see the good in them. And if I'm with them long enough and if I teach them enough things, they will be inherently good. And I'm like, or they will be a better person. And sometimes, I'm not even going to say sometimes, a lot of the times that's just not the case. People are who they are. And it's unfortunate, but if this person is abusive and yelling at you and telling you can starve, I understand that Belle in this situation is trapped and she can't leave because she traded her freedom for her father, but IRL. Fuck that. The Beast is not going to that town to take the father back. If Belle escaped, Belle would be fine. But, what is Stockholm Syndrome?
I can tell you.
Yeah, thank you.
I listened to a podcast about it. It started one day in Stockholm. There was a bank robbery.
God.
Basically, it's when
on it. Okay.
It's usually when someone kidnaps another person, and that person who's been kidnapped becomes
sympathetic,
empathetic, attached to the kidnapper, usually over a pretty short period of time. In the specific case that the name is based on, it was a bank robbery, and the people who were held hostage became attracted and emotionally attached to these robbers, which is like something that also happens, I'm sure, in like relationships, yes. Or just like not just like romantic ones, but just any kind of, like, even a boss and employee situation.
Boss employee.
It can happen in a lot of relationships,
friendships,
with any kind of power dynamic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just quickly wanted to say that I actually don't think people are necessarily, they are who they are and won't ever change and anything like that. But I do believe that no one will change for you, and you are not responsible for changing anyone. And if someone is abusive, they need to leave and do that work on their own. Like,
thank you. That is a better way.
So like, there are people who like are capable of growing past that and doing the work, but they cannot do it with the person they are abusing.
Right. It's not your job.
It's not healthy for either party.
Mm-hmm.
Next, fandom. We're done with Disney. Disney fucked us up real good.
So we had a revelation.
And yet we all still cosplay it, but whatever. Go.
Yeah, I am doing a cosplay this year with my friend.
You can like something while acknowledging the problems.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
So on to the next fandom, which I learned I'm the only one that has taken part in this fandom on this podcast. Doesn't surprise me, though.
That's okay, but it's a big one, so.
It's a big one, and it's Twilight.
Of course.
Shut up. I know. I'm not saying shut up to you. I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, oh my god, what was I thinking?
You were young.
I was
Tell us
young.
about Twilight.
Okay. It's honestly my guilty pleasure now. It's basically unhealthy because she is in an unhealthy relationship with just about everyone around her, but more specifically with the two male love interests that she has. Edward, her boyfriend, fiance, caregiver, vampire, and then
baby daddy.
Jacob, the werewolf hottie. So, the premise of Bella and Edward's relationship is very, 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 it's extremely codependent. It's codependent, it's possessive, overall unhealthy. So the movie books series start with Edward taking note of Bella, Bella taking note of Edward. He becomes intrigued and then proceeds to stalk her while she doesn't know she's being stalked. So he would break into her house and watch her sleep, follow her around town, watching her just about everywhere. When they do finally end up together, he is very possessive. He does not want her going certain places, doing certain things. She is super codependent and refuses to do anything without him. And within this series, they actually romanticize Bella's depression because he leaves. So he leaves, and instead she goes into this really bad depression for months. And it's the way it's portrayed, it's like, oh no, she just misses him a lot. Oh, it's okay. She just doesn't want to eat because she loves him. It's okay. She just wants to become a vampire so they can be together forever. And at no point in this situation is anybody offering her real viable help to get out of this very dark, this very dark place that she's gone to.
A romantic relationship cannot be your entire life.
Right.
You can't really rely on that because it might disappear. Like, you can't control that. You have to have a balanced life.
Exactly. Like, you both have to be two people on your own and come together as a couple, but still have, like, individual personalities. And I think at one point in the series, her mother, who's not really in it very often because her parents are separated, is like, you follow him around everywhere. And it's so, I keep saying unhealthy, but it's so upsetting because a lot of women, especially young women, like, they look towards that series and thought, oh yeah, I want a guy like Edward. He would do anything to protect me. He would keep me safe. He would be like the perfect boyfriend because he's a vampire and he looks young, etc., etc. And we all have this like unspoken draw to vampires because let's get it. At the end of the day, vampires are hot. But they are, I'm sorry, okay. Anne Rice has groomed me to love vampires.
Oh my god.
But his behavior is unacceptable.
His behavior is absolutely unacceptable.
And people don't realize that.
Right. And, okay, so now, not only his behavior is unacceptable, now we go into Jacob's behavior, who constantly belittles Bella for not being with him romantically. He is like he is the poster boy for friend zone guy. He belittles her for not wanting to be with him. He'll hang out with her and spend time with her, and then when he tries to make like a romantic pass and Bella reminds him, I'm with Edward, he'll just get angry and leave. He'll be like, you shouldn't be with him, you should be with me. And it's like, are you guys not friends? Like, just because you have another woman in your life does not mean that they are going to be romantically interested in you. And that's like that whole situation. So
And, like, the fact that Edward is... I don't know how old is he?
He's not as old as most vampires. He's only about 100 years older than her.
So, there's quite an age gap there, as you can imagine. Just
dear.
because he looks like a teenager doesn't mean he's a teenager.
It's got water on my nose.
Shit. It seems to me that it perpetuates this concept that, like, girls or just whoever should be owned by their romantic partner.
Right.
Yeah.
Which even the actor who plays Edward hates those movies. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm sure the actress too.
Yeah. And yes, both of them.
Both of them.
Yeah, and talking about, like, age gaps, where, like, there's a lot of relationships in media that you'll see where there's huge age gaps, like high school students and teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see that in Riverdale. You'll see that in Pretty Little Liars. And, like, Smallville is a bit of a throwback, but Smallville, that's I remember watching Smallville as a teenager and being like, the 16-year-old girl, maybe younger, and the football coach, who's definitely much older, and, like, I thought that was perfect. I was like, oh, this forbidden love affair. Mm-hmm. And now I'm thinking back on it, and I'm like, that's really, really bad. And one of the problems is that they look the same age.
Yes.
So, like, you don't have that visual distinction of she's a teenager, he's much older. And that's similarly with Riverdale.
The actors who are cast are much older than the people they are portraying, so they don't.
Right.
The age gap does not actually look like what it does. Like, I remember being in like seventh grade or whatever, and like talking to other girls about like which teacher was like the hot teacher. Which is like,
right.
That's like, that's fine. Like, kids have hormones and whatever. Yeah. It's not fine if the teachers are talking about which is the hot student,
yes,
which is a thing that does happen.
Gross.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only that, like, okay, so here's a better example of the vice versa, where it's now a younger male and an older female. In Dear White People, the show, the young Troy, who is like, the star student that everyone loves, is with Professor Hobbs, who is an older woman. And she essentially started grooming him from a young age because his father worked at the school. So whenever he would have to go to school or have his then colleagues come over, she was around this young boy and flirting with the child and making romantic passes at the child. And it's one of those things that's very ignored within our culture, especially within Black culture, is older women preying on young boys. And she is also in a marriage. She is married to her wife.
Oh.
I know.
This is the first season, right?
This was the first season, and I didn't know I ever got to watching the second season, but it's very depressing because you hear a lot of these stories of men saying, oh yeah, I lost my virginity to this older girl. Oh, the first time I had sex with this older girl, or when I was like 18, I had sex with this like hot, like they'd say, oh, it's like a hot cougar. I'm like, no. That's not appropriate. They should be looking at men their own age.
Yeah, it's because men's sexual experiences are celebrated and women's are shamed.
Right. And they don't realize that they're being preyed on. They think that because someone's attracted to them, that it's important for their manliness.
Not only do teenage girls,
no.
But I mean, our society in general has great issues with the whole like viewing like men who get raped as being raped. So
right. Yeah, so like obviously the problem is that there's especially with student and teacher relationships, there's a power dynamic and a power imbalance because the teacher has usually or often does have control over the student's grades. And even if they're not a direct teacher, they still have influence in the school over other teachers. It teaches you that relationships should be secret, not out in the open.
And it contributes to their power because if you do want to come forward at some point, you'll be like, well, nobody knew, so no one's going to believe me if I say anything about this teacher because they've done everything they can to protect their name.
It also it also teaches like young people that relationships happen during like high adrenaline times and like adventure seeking times. and not just like shows like The Bachelor and stuff like that, like promote this idea that like your dates need to all be like very extravagant instead of just like sitting and getting a cup of coffee, because like, you can't do that in a teacher and student romantic relationship because the teacher knows that they are not supposed to be with you.
Yeah.
Because they are pedophile.
Yep. Correct.
Yeah. It also fucks with your reputation, and which has a huge, huge impact on mental health.
It does, especially as a young teenager. Yourself, I don't want to say for every teenager, but a lot of times, like, the way you deem yourself worthy is based on how other people perceive you or place value on you. And if that's diminished or tarnished, then it's hard to come back from that, and it's hard to then perceive value or self-worth in yourself because of all the things that have transpired